Welcome to Heart and Hustle, where love meets mindset. I'm Courtney Ryan, and I'm here to help you level up your heart, your hustle, and your life. Today, I want to talk about something that so many men struggle with but don't even realize is affecting them, the subtle habits and behaviors that kill your value in front of a woman. These things don't just ruin your chances with her, they chip away at how you see yourself. Because when your confidence fades, so does your energy, your presence, and your masculine edge. Let's dive right in. Being too available is one of the most common yet misunderstood behaviors that slowly kills your value in front of a woman. On the surface, it might seem sweet, respectful, or even romantic. Being there whenever she needs, always responding quickly, making time no matter what. But underneath that, there's a subtle message being sent, and it's not the one you think. What's actually being communicated is that your time isn't valuable, that you don't have priorities of your own, and that your world revolves around her. And no matter how kind your intentions are, that's not attractive. Women are naturally drawn to men who have purpose, who are mission-driven, who have a direction in life that doesn't depend on anyone else. When you become too available, you give off the energy that you have nothing else going on. That energy isn't mysterious, exciting, or desirable. It's needy, predictable, and sometimes even suffocating. Let's talk about energy for a second, because energy is everything in attraction. When you're constantly available, constantly checking in, constantly trying to spend time with her, you're sending her your energy, but you're not protecting your own. And when your energy is always reaching toward her, instead of being centered within you, she feels that. That emotional overexposure can start to feel overwhelming, even if nothing toxic is actually happening. She may begin to subconsciously pull away, not even fully understanding why, but it's because she's not feeling the natural push and pull that creates emotional tension and interest. Relationships, especially in the early stages, thrive on a bit of mystery, space, and anticipation. If you're always just one text away, always ready to drop everything for her, there's nothing to wonder about. There's no curiosity being sparked, and curiosity is the beginning of connection. Being too available also creates a subtle imbalance of power. Not in a controlling or manipulative sense, but in the emotional dynamic between the two of you. If you're always saying yes, always waiting for her call, always clearing your schedule to match hers, it can come off like you're auditioning for a role in her life rather than just being confident in your own. That makes her feel like she's the prize, while you're the one constantly trying to win her over. And the truth is, attraction is strongest when both people feel like they're winning. When both people feel chosen, not chased. Being too available often shifts you into a mindset of trying to prove yourself instead of just being yourself. And over time, this can create a lack of respect. Not because you're not worthy, but because you're not showing up like someone who knows they are. There's a huge difference between being attentive and being available 24/7. Attentiveness is knowing what she likes, being thoughtful, showing genuine interest. But availability without boundaries communicates that you're prioritizing her over your own growth, your own responsibilities, your own goals. That you'll cancel your gym session, your work schedule, your downtime, or even your time with friends just to be with her. And while that might sound romantic in theory, in practice, it usually leads to burnout, resentment, or imbalance in the relationship. High-value men know that their time is precious. They don't give it to just anyone, and they certainly don't give it away freely without someone earning a place in their life. Not in a rude or egotistical way, but from a place of self-respect. Women don't want to be your entire world. They want a part of your world. They want to feel like they're stepping into the life of a man who's already full, already driven, already building something meaningful. When you make her the center of everything too soon, it puts pressure on her to fill spaces in your life that she didn't ask to fill. And that pressure turns into discomfort, which then turns into distance. You start thinking, what did I do wrong? I was there for her all the time. But that's the exact reason why she pulled back. There was no space for her to miss you, no time for her to reflect. No distance to let her feelings grow naturally. Everything was too accessible, too immediate, and too easy. When a man has his own life, his own routines, his own passions, he becomes magnetic. Not because he's playing games, but because he's centered. He's not waiting around for someone to validate his day. He's moving forward with purpose. And when a woman sees that, she doesn't question his value. She feels it. Being less available doesn't mean ignoring her. Being rude or playing hard to get, it means having standards for how you spend your time and energy. It means showing her that you have a mission, and while she might be a beautiful part of your life, she's not the only part. And that's what creates the kind of attraction that lasts longer than butterflies and good conversation. It creates depth, respect, and admiration. There's also a self-esteem element here. When you're too available, especially early on, you're often operating from a place of fear. Fear of losing her, fear of missing your chance, fear of not being chosen. So you try harder, show up more, text more, make plans faster, all hoping to secure your spot in her life. But real connection doesn't come from effort alone. It comes from alignment. When two people are right for each other, they don't need to force it. And when you have to constantly prove yourself just to keep someone interested, that's not attraction, that's anxiety. Confidence is the opposite of fear. It's the quiet knowing that you're enough and that anyone who doesn't see that isn't for you. When you step into that mindset, you won't feel the need to always be available because you'll trust that the right woman will meet you halfway. Seeking validation is one of those behaviors that many people fall into without even realizing it. It often starts small. Maybe you fish for a compliment here or there. Maybe you constantly ask if everything is okay between you and her, or maybe you find yourself needing to be reassured about how she feels about you. Over time, though, this constant need for external approval chips away at your masculine presence and your perceived value. When a woman senses that you're not sure of yourself and that you rely on her to tell you that you're good enough, attractive enough, or interesting enough, it creates a subtle imbalance. Instead of seeing you as grounded and confident, she starts to feel like she has to carry the emotional weight of your self-worth, and that's a role she didn't sign up for. At the core of this behavior is insecurity. Even if it's disguised as openness or emotional honesty, there's a big difference between healthy communication and emotional dependency. When you constantly look to a woman to make you feel better about yourself, you're placing your value in her hands. And the truth is, attraction doesn't thrive in that space. A woman doesn't want to feel like your emotional caretaker. She wants to be your partner. She wants to feel like she can lean on you sometimes, like you're solid and secure. If every moment together turns into you needing affirmation, it drains the emotional energy of the relationship. It doesn't come off as deep connection. It starts to feel like emotional neediness. Confidence isn't about being loud or dominant. It's not about being arrogant or never showing emotion. Real confidence is silent, steady, and internal. It's the knowing that you are enough with or without validation. When a man is confident in who he is, he doesn't need to be constantly told that he's doing well or that someone likes him. He already knows his value, and that self-assurance radiates. That's what draws people in. When you seek validation too much, it doesn't just turn her off. It causes you to doubt yourself even more because you're reinforcing the belief that you're not enough until someone else tells you so. That becomes a vicious cycle where no amount of reassurance ever feels like enough, because it's not coming from within. And let's talk about attraction psychology for a second. In the early stages of getting to know someone, a little uncertainty creates desire. When everything is laid out too soon, when you're constantly checking in to ask if she likes you, if she's thinking about you, or if you're good enough, it removes all the tension. She doesn't have to wonder, she doesn't get the chance to miss you, and she doesn't feel any sense of excitement or curiosity. Relationships, especially at the beginning, are built on a balance of emotional availability and mystery. When you seek constant validation, you give everything away at once. You take away the natural unfolding of connection, and that rush to be reassured actually prevents real depth from forming. Seeking validation can also show up in subtle ways. It's not always about directly asking questions. Sometimes it's in the way you talk about your accomplishments, not to share them, but to gain approval. Sometimes it's in the way you compliment her excessively, hoping she'll return the favor. Or maybe it's in how quickly you get discouraged if she doesn't respond a certain way or show enough excitement. All of these behaviors reflect a man who's placing too much of his identity in the hands of someone else. And while it's normal to want to be liked and appreciated, it becomes a problem when your emotional stability depends on it. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop needing validation and start trusting your own worth. You begin to move differently. You stop chasing, stop second-guessing, and stop performing for approval. Instead, you show up authentically, grounded in who you are. That presence is felt. Women can sense when a man is emotionally secure, and that sense of security is magnetic. It's not that you'll never doubt yourself or never feel insecure again, but you won't look to someone else to fix that for you. You'll work through it yourself. You'll have the emotional maturity to recognize your triggers and face them head on instead of handing them over to someone else to solve. There's also an important distinction between sharing and seeking. When you share something vulnerable with a woman, it's an invitation to connect. When you seek validation, it's a request to be rescued. Sharing is powerful because it shows self-awareness and trust. Seeking is draining because it puts emotional labor on the other person. When you learn to share without expecting someone to fix your emotions, you create space for real intimacy. You show that you're open but also self-reliant. That balance is key. It allows the woman to feel safe and inspired by your presence rather than burdened by your uncertainty. Another issue with constantly seeking validation is that it lowers your standards. When you're desperate to be liked, you start accepting behavior you wouldn't normally tolerate. You become afraid to speak up, afraid to walk away, and afraid to lose something that's giving you the approval you crave. That's when you lose your power. You stay in situations that don't serve you because the validation feels good, even if everything else feels wrong. But validation should never be the reason you stay. You should stay because it aligns with your values, because it grows you, and because it brings out the best in both of you, not because it temporarily fills an emotional gap. True self-worth is built in silence, in the decisions you make when no one is watching, in the way you hold yourself when no one's affirming you. It's in the habits you create, the goals you pursue, and the boundaries you set. When you know who you are, you don't chase approval. You attract respect. And when a woman sees that you respect yourself, she knows you're capable of respecting her too. Weak boundaries are one of the fastest ways to kill your value in front of a woman because they signal that you lack self-respect, self-awareness, and a clear sense of who you are. Boundaries are not about being rigid or controlling. They're about having a healthy respect for yourself and your needs. When you don't have strong boundaries, you send the message that you're willing to tolerate behavior that disrespects you or makes you uncomfortable just to keep the peace or to avoid conflict. And while this might seem like the easier road in the moment, it's actually a long-term trap that chips away at your confidence, your identity, and your ability to attract and maintain a high-quality connection. When a man has weak boundaries, he becomes reactive instead of proactive. He doesn't lead with intention. He responds to whatever is thrown at him. If a woman cancels plans last minute over and over again, and he just says, "It's okay," every time without ever expressing how that makes him feel, what he's really doing is teaching her that her time is more valuable than his, that he'll accept being treated as an option. And once a woman sees that, even if she doesn't say it out loud, her perception of his value shifts, not because she's cruel or insensitive, but because we are wired to respond to what people allow. If you allow repeated disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional chaos without ever standing up for yourself, that becomes the standard of how people will treat you. Having boundaries means knowing where you stand. It means you're clear about your values, your time, your energy, and your emotional space. It means you know what you will and will not accept, and you don't compromise those things just to be liked, to avoid discomfort, or to hold on to someone. A lot of men fall into the trap of thinking that being agreeable or easygoing will make them more likable, but in reality, it makes them forgettable. Women may enjoy the convenience of someone who never pushes back, but they rarely respect or feel real attraction for someone who doesn't stand their ground. There is a quiet power in the word no, in being able to walk away from something that doesn't serve you, in not needing to explain yourself every time you choose yourself. Weak boundaries also show up in emotional situations. Let's say a woman is being hot and cold. One day she's super into you, the next day she pulls away and gives mixed signals. If you keep chasing her, trying harder to impress her, waiting by your phone, adjusting your behavior to match her mood swings, you're not being emotionally available. You're being emotionally unstable. Strong boundaries in this case would mean recognizing the inconsistency, having a conversation about it, and being willing to walk away if things don't change. That shows strength, that shows clarity, and that shows self-respect. When you let someone pull you in and push you out repeatedly without holding them accountable or without walking away, you're putting their emotional roller coaster above your own peace. Another way weak boundaries show up is in physical or sexual situations. If you feel uncomfortable with something, or if something moves too fast and doesn't feel right, and you go along with it anyway because you don't want to disappoint her or seem insecure, you're betraying yourself. Real confidence is being able to say, "This doesn't feel right for me right now," without shame. It's being able to pause, to express yourself honestly, and to not fear the reaction. A woman who is worth your time will respect your honesty and your ability to stay true to yourself. When you abandon yourself to please someone else, you lose more than just your power. You lose your identity piece by piece. In conversations, weak boundaries can also look like constantly changing your opinions to match hers, agreeing with things you don't believe in, or staying silent when something bothers you. You think you're keeping the peace, but you're actually building quiet resentment. You're sending the message that her voice matters more than yours. Over time, this creates a dynamic where she leads and you follow, not out of respect, but out of passivity. And passivity kills polarity. Relationships thrive when both people show up fully as themselves. If you're always shrinking to make someone else feel more comfortable, you're not giving her the real you, and you're not giving yourself the space to grow. A man with strong boundaries knows his worth, and because of that, he doesn't fear loss. He knows that losing someone because he stood up for himself isn't a loss, it's a win. It's a filtering process that removes the people who aren't aligned with his values. He doesn't fear confrontation because he knows that healthy conflict leads to clarity, and he doesn't rely on people to manage his emotional state because he takes responsibility for it. That self-possession is incredibly attractive, not just because it makes a woman feel safe, but because it shows that you're emotionally mature and capable of leading your own life. Boundaries are not about being guarded or shutting people out. They're about creating a safe space where real connection can happen. When a woman sees that you're a man who can say no, who knows what he stands for, who isn't afraid to walk away from what doesn't serve him. She sees a man who values himself. And when you value yourself, others naturally follow suit. You don't have to demand respect. You inspire it. You create a dynamic where she knows that your love, your time, and your presence are things to be earned, not taken for granted. That kind of energy is what builds attraction, admiration, and long-term connection. Oversharing your emotions too soon is one of those things that might seem like honesty or openness, but it often creates a sense of imbalance that can make a woman pull away instead of drawing closer. Emotional expression is powerful, but timing and context are everything. When a man shares too much too soon, especially deep insecurities, painful past experiences, or unresolved emotional wounds, it doesn't come across as vulnerability. It comes across as emotional dumping, and when that happens early on, before trust or emotional safety has been built, it puts the other person in a position of emotional responsibility that they didn't ask for and aren't ready for. There's a difference between being emotionally intelligent and being emotionally unstable. Emotional intelligence means knowing what you feel, understanding where it comes from, and being able to express it in a healthy and measured way. Emotional instability, on the other hand, is when your feelings control you and spill out without boundaries. When a woman is still getting to know you, she's trying to figure out if you're grounded, consistent, and secure. If you open up in a way that feels more like venting or looking for someone to soothe your pain, she won't see it as strength. She'll see it as fragility. And fragility is not the same as sensitivity. Sensitivity is self-aware. Fragility is dependent. Men are often told to open up more, to be vulnerable, and to share their feelings. And that advice is valid, but it's incomplete. It doesn't talk about emotional leadership. Emotional leadership means being in touch with your emotions without letting them dominate your interactions. It means being able to feel deeply without needing someone else to constantly manage or regulate those emotions for you. When you overshare too soon, especially before a solid emotional foundation is built, you bypass the natural process of trust. You're trying to fast-track connection by creating intimacy, but what you end up doing is overwhelming the other person emotionally. It feels like too much, too fast. It's important to remember that emotional connection should unfold gradually. Just like physical intimacy, emotional intimacy has its own pace. When you open up layer by layer, you allow space for mutual trust and respect to grow. You give the other person time to feel safe, to understand you, and to want to go deeper with you. But when you immediately unload everything, your traumas, your fears, your insecurities, it doesn't feel like trust, it feels like a red flag. She doesn't see it as a moment of honesty. She sees it as a lack of emotional control. And when a man lacks emotional control, it can feel chaotic. Many men fall into the trap of oversharing because they confuse it with connection. They think that if they reveal more of themselves, it will make the woman feel closer to them. But real closeness doesn't come from how much you reveal, it comes from how you reveal it. Are you sharing because you want to build trust? Or are you sharing because you're looking for comfort and reassurance? When your motive is to gain emotional security from the other person, the energy becomes needy. And neediness kills attraction. Women want a man who can hold space for himself, who can sit with his emotions without needing someone to rescue him from them. There's also a timing issue. In the early stages of dating or even in a new relationship, the emotional structure isn't strong enough yet to handle the weight of deep emotional baggage. If you start revealing every emotional wound right away, the other person hasn't had a chance to build trust or commitment to the point where they feel ready to take on that emotional responsibility. It doesn't mean you can't ever share those things. It means that emotional intimacy has to be earned, not demanded. It needs to be reciprocal and paced. When a man is emotionally grounded, he knows how to regulate himself. He doesn't avoid his emotions, but he doesn't let them spill out unchecked either. He knows when it's time to talk about something meaningful and when it's time to sit with those feelings and process them first. He knows that strength doesn't mean silence, but it does mean discernment. When you process your emotions internally and then share them from a place of clarity rather than chaos, you communicate strength and self-awareness. That is what real vulnerability looks like. It's not messy, it's not desperate, it's intentional and secure. Another issue with oversharing too soon is that it creates imbalance in emotional investment. If one person starts revealing everything and the other is still warming up to the connection, it feels off. There's no equal pacing. One person is rushing ahead emotionally while the other is still trying to figure out how they feel. That rush creates pressure, and pressure leads to withdrawal. Emotional connection is not something you can force. It's something you build by being emotionally safe, present, and stable. When a woman feels that you're centered, even when you share difficult things, it allows her to feel emotionally safe with you. Being emotionally open doesn't mean sharing everything. It means sharing the right things at the right time in the right way. It means being able to say, yeah, I've been through things, without letting those things define how you show up. It means having emotional depth without emotional chaos. It means you're not afraid to talk about your feelings, but you don't use those conversations to gain pity or approval. And most importantly, it means you respect the emotional process of the other person. You don't rush them. You don't dump on them. You give them space to come closer at their own pace. You hold your emotional weight and you let them decide when and how they want to meet you in that space.